Good to go. Arjun, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Awesome. Well, we'll just hop right in. Welcome to the first LI.FI Finance.
Right, I think we're good to go.
Let me close off my browser.
Awesome.
Sorry about that.
Well, we'll just hop right in. Welcome to the first LI.FI Finance.
Okay, restart. Okay. Welcome to the first LI.FI Finance Twitter Spaces. Sorry for all the technical difficulties at the beginning here. We're calling this, this is right off a hot brainstorming session from the marketing team, the LI.FI Let's Talk Cross-Chain interview series, where we, LI.FI, a cross-chain bridge and DEX aggregator, talk about cross-chain stuff with experts from across the metaverse. I'm Mark. I do BD and research at LI.FI Finance, and my co-host today is Arjun. Arjun, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey everyone. So I work with Mark at LI.FI, and I work with the research team and marketing team.
Yeah, he's the main threador and think piece extraordinaire at LI.FI. So, if you ever like a thread from us, it's usually from him. Today, we have a special guest joining us from Biconomy. We're joined by the founder and CEO, Ahmed. Tell me if I pronounced that correctly. Welcome.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it. And yeah, you pronounced it pretty right.
Awesome. We'll just hop straight in. Would you mind giving just a quick little background on yourself? Maybe your trip down the crypto rabbit hole, and then give us, maybe a minute or two on what Biconomy does.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So for myself, from my side, I've just space for the past 6 years. Have worked across different roles with different companies. Funny enough, I started in China. I was studying in Shanghai. That's really, I say, right into crypto. Where I somehow got to know the Bitcoin and then Ethereum community in Shanghai was very sort of bustling when Vitalik used to come to China quite a bit as well, and there was just a very tight knit community, and since then it's just been continuous learning, understanding the space, seeing its development. From all different angles as well. But before crypto, I was in finance, in the financial sector for a bit as well. Really what we're doing at Biconomy, our focus is primarily on abstracting away all the complexities we see developers and end users face at the transactional layer, right? And for us, we currently provide 2 different products. One is gasless and the other is Hyphen. Happy to talk through those in a bit more detail. But for us, it's all about how we could really onboard the next billion users and make Web3 as seamless as possible.
Yep, we'll definitely dive into the 2 different products there. But Arjun, do you just want to hop in and talk a little bit about the Biconomy relationship and kind of why we're on this spaces today?
I mean, yeah. So we're a bridge aggregator, and we've integrated Biconomy's Hyphen bridge. So we've basically inherited their strengths, and so they're one of the most capital efficient bridges out there, and they offer the fastest routes as well. And till now, they've done more than 100 million in total volume. So we're obviously very excited to be able to offer Hyphen and all its features to our users.
Perfect. And then, Ahmed, do you just want to jump in and maybe give us the breakdown of the difference between your two products? Because by my research, and Arjun does a lot more of the research, is more on the research side, so he's way more knowledgeable about this than me. But it seems like you have more of like a retail product, and you have maybe more of a B2B type product. So maybe can you
Yeah,
just speak on that?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So
oh, I think there is a okay. We're all good. So on that regard, we see ourselves as more like a, I'd say, B2B2C in that aspect. And what's interesting is, we started off with the key question of how can we increase adoption in the space, and primarily saw that a really big way of enabling adoption is by solving problems for developers, and it was then that we realized that these developers, they'd build these applications, and but we really didn't see that much adoption, and they actually had to work a lot on a lot of infrastructure work in order to actually help increase adoption on their side. And so for us, we worked, which is right now our first product, which is Gasless, which allows application owners, developers to abstract away gas fees from their end users. And this really, we see is a fundamental building block for developers, because they have many different ways of engaging their users through Gasless. And yeah, so that's something that we directly work with other developers on. With Hyphen, it's I'd say in a way similar. The way Hyphen was born. So Hyphen, as you correctly said, Arjun, is our bridge, and our liquidity layer, really, where we basically built that because we had a lot of feedback from developers telling us, hey, our end users on Polygon can't move their funds back to Ethereum very quickly, and really that's how the product was born. And so for us, it was all about okay, how can we make a really simple user experience for both developers and end users to use Hyphen, whether they want to use it in their application, and how end users could actually just interact with it from the UI level as well. And so for us, it's about really creating these these really reliable and yeah, very reliable abstraction layers for developers that will just allow them to engage their user base even more. And of course, with all this, with all this cross-chain and multi-chain sort of narrative that we're seeing, and the high levels of adoption, it just makes the complexities even more even more apparent, right? And so it's just interesting to see how the space is evolving.
For sure, for sure. Could we maybe dive into the concept of abstraction? I know that we talk about that a lot at LI.F Finance, where cross chain bridging. It's kind of like moving from chain A to chain B seems to take like 8 different clicks and 2 different
Yeah,
wallets, and it's just terrible. So what exactly are like the pain points that you're trying to abstract away, and like maybe use Gasless as the example?
yeah. So I mean, in that regard, we work with a number of applications. So far, like, just to give some context and some light, so we've worked over 80 applications, and I believe, yeah, we already crossed 17 million gases transactions so far, which is really cool. And this has basically allowed us to experiment and to really find really interesting use cases of how a new users who just come into Web3 are onboarded just by not having to have the native token of the base chain they're on, and B, it just even allows for more engagement. So even if this end user comes in repeatedly to use the application, they wouldn't have to pay gas fees at all for that as well. And so the way we see it is this abstraction layer, particularly for gasless, whether it's for DeFi applications, NFT applications, or even where we're seeing more and more use cases, just really helps end users go from would it be what, let's say, even 8 to 10 clicks, right, down to only one click when the end user is interacting with the application. And so for them, it's a matter of just signing a message, and the transaction is gone to is basically gone to the mempool, and it gets transacted for them. So for us, where we're seeing use cases from a very simple NFT mint to even to just complex way business logic that dApps have on their side that they want to interact with the end user.
That's a great explanation of how abstraction is going to change the game. The end goal, right, for all this cross-chain stuff is for the user to not even realize what chain they're on.
Exactly.
But that just that can sometimes building in the space. I mean, much more than I do. It's just like seems like it could be far away, but I love hearing about how everyone is working on that goal. Could we maybe talk about how like the whole the narrative we hear in 2022 is like the L2 2022, cross chain with Cosmos has been popular. Could you maybe dive into if we're seeing like user growth or platform growth at Biconomy, and whether you expect that to boom in the next 6 months, or do you think the cross chain narrative is something that won't explode until it's like 18 months out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's funny how I totally forgot about the layer 222 type here, right? Like it's it would make sense just because of how timely it is. I definitely for me, the way I see growth, especially when it comes to these especially when you see like just in technological history and advancement, that it's always going to be there's going to be like a to and fro between infrastructure and infrastructure development and application development. And so we're, I'd say, in the midst of heavy infrastructure development after a huge application innovation, right? So with what we've seen from DeFi summer to NFTs, and this is why we're seeing more and more infrastructure being built, whether it's for NFTs, whether it's for DeFi, whether it's for cross and multi-chain applications as well. And so the growth would largely depend on how fast these infrastructures get built out, and how widely they're adopted. And I would say it's hard to put a timeline on these, because when traditional development cycles, right, you don't need to consider audits. Audits are like the bane of every project's life. And so I feel like we will we will definitely see more activity pick up, with way more experimentation by the end of this year. But I see us seeing growth in already existing ecosystems, whether it's like Cosmos, whether it's Polygon as well. These ecosystems will continue to see growth. But for the multi-chain, cross-chain angle, and especially, usage on these alternative networks will largely just depend on, how safe and how unhackable they are, right, to some degree as well. And so yeah, it's really interesting, but of course, like 18 months, it's hard to predict in the next 3 months, right? In the next 18 months, I definitely foresee the whole industry booming with so many, with so much infrastructure already built out. And if we were to call the year of something, like, I can't wait for the year of infrastructure, because that's when, you know when you're just going to have a huge number of, you're going to have a huge design space for what is possible, right? Uh, Versus what wasn't possible before.
If the crypto space ever is so logical that they have the year of the infrastructure play, I don't know if it's going to be cool anymore, right? That's so traditional, right?
Well, do you know what? The thing is that it might be sooner than we realize, because if we really want to get 1 billion users into this space, then we're not ready. Like, no one's ready. The infrastructure has to be built out to serve those billion users, right? But I definitely get what you mean when it comes to, in a way, not being cool enough. But what crypto has different than just traditional tech is that, at least as the infrastructure is being built out, you have a parallel world with NFTs and people trading, and like trading, like maybe meme coins or whatever, to sort of keep that interest alive, right? So it actually, in a way, plays to even the strength for the infrastructure projects, because there's a quicker feedback loop as to what should be built and what shouldn't be built, and what's important now versus what can be important to be built out. So yeah, so I I think let's say the unsexy stuff is probably the you, I'd say, like, at least, of course I'm biased, right? It's probably the biggest long-term play.
So maybe let's dive into the unsexy stuff here for a second. Could you maybe give some insight into the infrastructure plays that Biconomy is most excited about working on, and then maybe talk just a bit about the cross-chain space at large, like what pieces of infrastructure need to be iterated on and added to?
Yeah, no, really good question. So I mean, look, for us, we've been we're at a time where we're basically building infrastructure to make Web3 easy to use, right? And for us, it's about and what we've increasingly been realizing is that there are some things that are, of course, better to build now than it is to build. No, sorry, it's the other way around. It's best to build now, and other things. Although we want to build now, we could probably just wait till later. And so for us, what we're really working on is, as we mentioned, we've got these two products, but at the moment, they are in I'd say, a semi-centralized state. We don't want to be in a position where there is this sort of central point of failure, and this is why we've been actively working on what we call our multi-chain relay protocol, and this would basically decentralize the products that we have, and also enable new use cases as well, and sort of play into the larger part of the whole multi-chain narrative. And I think really the really interesting, I think there are 2 points to that really like stand out, after as we're working on the architecture and also just speaking to different players in the space as well, is that not everything like needs to be bridged. You could just have message transfers and all will be good. And number two is that you just can't hide away from bad security, right? And if you had bad security, and that's like your like version 0.1, like that's fine as long as you put that out into the open. But it's really interesting to see how there's just way more value on security, and of course, right, with all good reason, because we don't want to see all the we don't want to be in a position where we're seeing all these hacks happen. And so I feel like when it just comes to anything multi-chain and cross-chain, the first question that comes to mind is security. And until we get that bit, until we get over that hurdle, then it's off to the races, really.
I mean, it's great that you mentioned security, right? Because even we at LI.FI kind of focus a lot on security and reliability of the product rather than shipping quickly. So, given all these hacks recently, what does Biconomy do to ensure security? Like, what are some measures that you guys take?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, I can't really speak to more of the technical nature, since I'm not on the technical team.
Mm.
But to give more of for us, we do have, so like we're a type of team that really execute fast and wants to sort of build really fast, and try and like ship things fairly quickly. And there are times like with most teams that you miss deadlines. You miss these let's say certain milestones, at least particularly just from a building standpoint. But in the grand scheme of things, when you think about it, if what you've built is actually secure, um, and has basically near zero surface of surfaces of attack, and it's been delayed by 2 or 3 weeks, then like there's no problem there. And so we kind of, like, the first thing we do is we mention, like, we kind of say, like, hey, like, this is really important. Like, we test the solution so much that it's okay even if we do miss these deadlines. And so for us, that's one thing that we iterate to the team very clearly. Number two is we're very lucky to be sort of we working with auditors that are able to that are able to at least, like, keep up with the amount of stuff that we're shipping and that we're building. And so we're kind of experimenting with, like, different auditors. We've worked with at least, I'd say, 4 or 5 auditors in the past. And we're at a position whereby everything we're building would at least now have a minimum of one professional audit and one community-wide audit, right? And so with the great thing with community-wide audit is that you have more eyes looking into the code as well. So that's something that we've just started off, like, recently, at least with Hyphen v2. And as we go along, that's something that we'll continue sort of to do, at least having two audits for any big release that we have. And and of course, when it comes to for example, like private key security and all that, I can't really speak to that since Sachin, our CTO, if he's here on the call, which he isn't. Yeah, if he was here, he could have chimed in on that.
Yeah, I mean, sounds great. Like your documentations are quite comprehensive and all the security measures are well documented there. So you talked about Hyphen 2.0. So maybe tell us about like what's new, what's improved, and like why did you feel the need for like an update to the original product?
Yeah, so no, good question. So for us, we created Hyphen V1 again, like as I mentioned previously, on the basis of really, the developer problems and end user problems. And as we sort of built it out, V1 was heavily centralized. We basically just used our own money, so we were basically the LPs of Hyphen, and it wasn't scalable as well. So it was a great sort of proof of concept that we managed to get out, and it worked. And so V2 basically changed everything on its head, whereby anyone could be an LP. B, it's more scalable because given the nature of Hyphen V2 with with single-sided assets on the different chains that we support, it basically means that all we have to do is basically just deploy the same smart contract on different chains, and so it's scalable by nature. And then number three is the rebalancing mechanism through the dynamic fee module, and so this basically removes the reliance on Biconomy in version 1, where we had to sort of do manual rebalancing, and sort of automating that to now an incentivized way of allowing the community and bot runners to come in and rebalance the pools whenever supplied liquidity is off from available liquidity. And so these are the three main, I'd say, additions and innovations that V2 has at the moment.
Yep. Could you just be another 30, 45 seconds on the rebalancing feature? That was one of my favorite things about Biconomy when I was researching, just because I thought it was a very cool way to use the token.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, so the idea is that if you had two pools, one on Ethereum, one on Polygon, and it was a USDC pool, for example, if you had basically the supplied liquidity on Ethereum was a million, and it was also a million on Polygon. The idea is that if anybody was basically doing a transfer from the source chain to the destination chain, basically the algorithm would detect and see if they're moving funds away from the destination chain, and that results in an even further decrease between the supplied liquidity and the available liquidity, then that transfer would be more expensive. And so the idea is that and you can think of this as slippage as well. And the idea is that if at the destination chain the available liquidity is way less than the supplied liquidity, then anybody, including bots, moving from that side to the other side would be able to actually be rewarded for that transaction, because they're sort of rebalancing the pools in this sense. And the idea is that in the long term, this will all be self-reliant on fees alone, because if someone is willing to pay an extra buck to move from the source chain to the destination chain where there is less available liquidity, then that extra buck that they paid would be distributed to the bots or the community who are rebalancing the pools back.
Yeah, I think the dynamic fees model kind of really stood out for me as well personally. I think it just makes you guys even more capital efficient, right? Like I think even with Hyphen, the first model, your focus was always on capital efficiency, and with the new features, you just gone ahead and made it more, even more capital efficient. So I guess,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, I mean that's great to see, right? Like you guys were initially very focused on capital efficiency, and that was kind of your unique proposition. So uh, my
Yeah.
next question would be, with all this competition in the space, like all these bridges competing with each other, how do you see yourself standing out, and like how do you see all these bridges competing with each other?
Yeah, good question. So it's funny. I mean, this is something, of course, that we discuss, and I'm sure that you guys also internally discuss as well. For us, we've always been very adamant and focused on how we could be, the fastest service available. We think convenience is a really important aspect of of many people's lives, and that's something that is, we've seen, right, would at least with how we operate, just individually in our lives, and offering this sort of the function is a really really important factor. The second is of course, as well, is the capital efficiency. Capital efficiency is more so, I would say, not so much more on one product being better than another, but more so just from I, I would say just from a standpoint of being resilient over the long run. The great thing is that we don't need to have hundreds of millions or billions to be here as a TVL, and we give so much away in our own token to sort of to incentivize its liquidity, right? Like, we don't believe in that, and we think like this is a more responsible approach. And the third is of course security. Like we, again, like, think heavily on the security aspect. um Even as we're building our protocol, um most I'd say at least 90% of discussions around the message passing layer is all around the security element, and it's something that our architect is it's funny, like, we're not happy moving forward unless we we keep until we address and have a satisfactory answer for security concerns that we see in the build out of our protocol. And so for us, Hyphen is a great, I'd say, experimentation tool for enabling cross-chain transfers at scale. And it would be sort of this first step on the protocol that we're launching. And so for us, we definitely see Hyphen interacting within its own ecosystem as well, moving forward. And so for us, I also personally think this space is so large enough that it would accommodate many players. It would accommodate players across regions as well, which is not really talked a lot about in crypto, um, and also in other aspects, and how these solutions are picked up in the market as well. So our focus is also pretty much working with developers. Other products or other bridges, I would say, are very focused on the retail or UI side. So yeah, I really think there are many different segments at play here.
Just to intervene a bit, Mark, and time for one more question. Our dear guest, sadly, has to leave soon, so we're nearing the end. So pick the last question wisely.
Oh man, that's a lot of pressure. Yeah, we were told to keep this to 30 or 40 minutes, but Arjun and I get so excited. It's hard to pick the best question here. We'll just end it. Ahmed, what should people be looking for from Biconomy in the next month or so? Is there anything that you want to give a shout out to, or any channels, Medium pages that they should definitely follow?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. So first of all, I would definitely say check out the DAO, like our Biconomy DAO. We just recently launched yesterday, and this is something that this is something that really anyone could be a part of and contribute to. So this is basically our first phase of having a community budget, let's say. So we basically put out $2 million in terms of for this DAO, so that we could give it as part of grants and bounties. And so far, we've already been receiving people applying for grants. It hasn't been 24 hours, but we've already received a great number of applications and quite a lot of different profiles of contributors too, that sort of want to be a part of the DAO. And yeah, it will be great to to get people here to sort of look into what we're doing. And the cool thing here is that we're not decentralizing everything from day one. We don't think that makes sense. We've always been about progressive decentralization, and so it allows us to be comfortable with the contributors that are coming on board, and with the decisions that we could sort of give to the community. And it also allows the community to be comfortable with also how much the limits are in place, only because if you decentralize things too fast, then everyone will be frustrated over the long term, right? So we think that this approach is a net win-win. So definitely consider everyone to look into that. We are also going to be coming out with our version 1 of staking. So this would be similar to what we see as safety modules in DeFi. This would be for our Bico token. And yeah, this would basically be a safety module for Hyphen as well. So that's another cool thing about it. But it's a great place for all the Bico hodlers and investors to basically earn an APY on the Bico tokens. And we also have a couple of other announcements that, again, depending on audits and when they finish, they will come through. But yeah, we have quite a few interesting announcements to make once things are finalized. And I'd also say the last thing is that we are supporting new chains for Hyphen as well. So we're going to be supporting Binance Smart Chain next, and a few others before the end of the month.
That's amazing. Very, very, very interesting information. And while talking about DAOs, I want to end with something. And we also launched our DAO just a little bit more closed, if you will. So it's an initiative kind of for the betterment of cross-chain experience, as we strive kind of for interoperability and focus on attracting the SEPs for hopping across chains. We want to create a community of builders in the space, project founders, team leaders, that all of us together can kind of move the cross-chain ecosystem forward. So to that note, I would ask you privately if you can send me your ERC20 address so we can send you an NFT for the gated community as we kind of slowly start building it up.
Cool, awesome.
And thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you for explaining a lot of things. Thank you for sharing alpha. I hope this is not the last interview we're going to do.
No, for sure. Absolutely, enjoyed this a lot. And yeah, hopefully when we do we hope to do more of our sessions as well. So hopefully we can get you guys on at some point too.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ahmed.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yep. Thanks for hopping on.